Recently, Abbott and Preach dropped a video talking about these two women that were on a podcast talking about how men should die for women in a chivalrous manner.
And what's your complaint of the day?
Do you know what mine is? It's trains and people and men. I think, like men not wanting. It's like the battle of the sexes when it comes to seats on trains.
Yeah.
I've noticed that men don't really want to be getting up for us anymore.
They don't. You're actually
a man. You know, if this was the Titanic, it would be women and children. And it should be the same with the trains.
Let me tell
women.
But we've evolved from that. And I need my life saved too.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. If I'm on Titanic, I don't give a fuck. Fuck you. If you're not my wife or my child, I'm not giving up my life. So why?
I'm kicking babies in the throat.
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck that, man. Are you really gonna give your spot up for a woman who's an OnlyFans model? No, but seriously, like, this whole idea of the Titanic is a misconception, actually. People think that the men were brave enough to give their spot up for these women and children, but that's not exactly the case. As a matter of fact, if you take a look at some of the sources, you can see that there's somewhat of a story here that indicates that the men jumped into the boats before being ordered out by the ship's officers. The reason why they had to get out was because there was an officer there with a gun telling them, nope, it's only women and children. This barbaric practice is essentially called the Birkenhead drill. And essentially it means that whenever there's a life-threatening situation, children and women are the first ones to go, while the men are the ones to stay behind and perish. In what way is that even remotely noble? That isn't. It just sounds like coercion to me. But not only that, she's also implying with her statement that men 100 years ago were noble and chivalrous, when that absolutely wasn't even the case either. So believe this or not, the Titanic was a ship that sank in 1912. 3 years after that, in 1915, there was a ship by the name of Lusitania. Now, the Lusitania also sank. And guess what? They tried to follow the same protocol they did on the Titanic. But this time, no women or children were prioritized. As a matter of fact, everybody was for themselves. Aboard the sinking Lusitania, the scene was very different. Women and children were less likely than men to survive the disaster because men used their natural strength and speed to take the spaces on the lifeboats, with women and children forced out of their way.
I'm kicking babies in the throat.
Yeah, you know, you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And I'm most definitely becoming a villain. At least until later on in the story where, plot twist, I become the good guy. But you see how that whole conception that she made up, talking about how men aren't men anymore, just kind of falls apart when you start to take a deeper look into history. But honestly, I don't even blame her, because this is more or less a Hollywood thing. Hollywood has prioritized that whole story, making it seem like, yeah, that's such a noble cause. They even made a movie about it, the Titanic, with Leonardo DiCaprio, where he also in the movie states something similar to, you know, women and children first, which is absolutely stupid as since then. I haven't watched another movie from Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm just kidding. No, I've actually watched many others. But the reason why it's stupid is because it's a myth. It never goes down that way. You know, usually when there's a shipwreck, everybody's quick to just jump on those lifeboats. And here's another piece of history regarding the Titanic. Did you know that the passengers, they didn't even realize that the Titanic was sinking, which is why everybody was calm and was allowing the women and children first. It wasn't until the end, when the ship was actually going down, that the men started realizing, like, wait a minute, bro, we just got fucked. They were all yelling for the boats to come back, the lifeboats. And of course, they didn't go back. As you can read here, it reads, you know, Herbert Pittman, who was one of the officers, wanted to return back to the scene so he can try to pick up some of the survivors. But, you know, some of the women, as you can see here, the women on board protested, one begging a steward, appealed to the officer not to go back. Why should we lose our lives in a useless attempt to save others from the ship? And then, of course, Pittman, who, again, was the officer on the Titanic, you know, he gave in to the protest, obviously, but, you know, as a consequence of that, he was haunted by guilt for the rest of his life. Now, it's easy to construct a bias and say, well, you know, that's pretty selfish from the women. But the thing is that, believe it or not, it's not just women, it's men as well. You know, this is an act of human nature. You know, people are pretty selfish when it comes to dire situations. From the examples that I've seen from shipwrecks, it's more or less everybody for themselves. When you take a look at the majority of these shipwrecks, you start to notice that there's a consistent pattern that men usually have a high survival rate, and that's mainly because they're much stronger, they're faster. The Titanic just happens to be one of those exceptions, but mainly when you take a look at the details, you start to realize that, yeah, a lot of these men, it seems like they didn't really understand the dire situation. A lot of them had the impression that this ship was not going to sink, and so therefore a lot of these men died under the impression that they were gonna live. Now, the Titanic is just a segment of this video. I do also want to go ahead and address the other statement that she made on that podcast, essentially that she is perceived as a man hater.
What's the biggest misconception that people have about you?
Biggest misconception, I would say, I don't know if it's still the same, but I think biggest misconception is I'm a man hater, and I don't really mind that PR. But it's annoying when people truly think it's real, especially like when guys approach me, they'll be like, "Oh, you hate men, innit?" I'm just like, oh, get out my face, man. Do you know what I mean?
Have a better opening line.
Yeah, have a better opening
please.
line, you know. And I feel like they're just stuck for words. They don't really know what to say. I haven't had it in quite a while. Maybe I just don't go out that much. I don't know. Or maybe people are maturing. But it used to be the biggest one. Oh, she's a man hater. She don't like men. I'm just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, do you know me?
Now, when I heard the statement, personally to me, what she said about the Titanic, it didn't really come off as man hating, but it did kind of give me the idea that, you know, women are up here while men are down here. Another issue that I have with this is that she just disregards the criticism. If a lot of people are perceiving you as a man hater, then perhaps it's your rhetoric that is delivering that kind of essence to them. However, I will empathize with her here because unfortunately people have no clue as to how to constructively criticize a person or even a content creator. I've had viewers negatively critique me in my comment section stating that I misrepresented a certain idea, but then provide absolutely no substance as to why I misrepresented it. There are, however, very, very few people that will actually give you a substantive critique. And when they do give you a substantive critique, I think it's in your best interest to take it. Like, for instance, in a video where I talk about how there's going to be no Joe Rogan on the left, I briefly mentioned this particular moment where Hassan was communicating with a Houthi rebel, but I critiqued it. However, there was new evidence that came out that this boy is perhaps not associated with them, but instead supports them. But I talked about the situation as if this was fact. So there was a person who came to me in the comment section and let me know, like, listen, the information's been updated and this boy isn't really a Houthi rebel, or he's not what he says he is. So I deleted that segment of the video and we carried on. So if you want to critique a content creator and you want to let them know about a certain piece of information, I highly suggest that you approach it respectfully and, of course, link the substantive piece of information somewhere in the comment section below. So yeah, I just kind of want to go ahead and let you guys know that, because oftentimes when people leave negative comments on my comment section, I tend not to pay attention to them and I don't want to associate with them. But that one time I did want to ask, you know, what did I misrepresent? Because the person, he didn't call me any names. He just left the comment and said that I was misrepresenting you know, the video or whatever the case is. So yeah, I just kind of want to just go ahead and talk about that. That's really all I have for you guys. And yeah, hopefully you guys learned something today.